and sit down.
Hey everybody, welcome once again to Toy Talk. I hope everybody's been getting out there enjoying some of this early spring weather. I know I have, but as I'm back in the studio, I was thinking about a certain topic this month, and a friend made a statement to me a few years ago that really hit me at the time and stuck in my head. And what he said was, you know, good things and bad things happen to us every day, but we have a tendency to focus on the bad things or to only think about the bad things. And as he said that, I went, oh, that can't be true. But then as I started to think about it more, I realized, you know, we do, or I do even, have a tendency to think on the negative things that happen in life more so than the positive. And I was just like, this can't be accurate, but apparently it does seem to be. Why is it that we have a tendency to focus on the bad things that happen more so than the good things that happen in life? I mean, it just seems like somehow like we're hardwired in this way that when something bad happens, it seems to impact us more than when something good happens. Now, I'm talking about on smaller scales. Of course, if something large that impacts our lives in a good way happens, we think about it quite a bit, the same as we would something negative. But in the day-to-day, the little simple things that are happening, it seems like the little negative things that happen tend to bother us more than the large things. And I started thinking about this more and started even doing some research on it, and I learned that there is a psychiatric term, and that's called negative bias or positive-negative asymmetry. And what negative bias or positive-negative asymmetry actually teaches us is that our brain is actually hardwired in a way that negative thoughts or negative situations actually impact our brain in a more significant way than positive things. So when something negative happens, it has a tendency to get in our brain and stick there more so than positive things. Now, I don't understand why this is, but it is an actual scientific medical fact. So what does this mean to us? Does this mean that just no matter what happens in life, good or bad, we're always going to focus on those little negative things? I mean, because you think about a day at work and you may have had an excellent day, everything went right, maybe you made a lot of sales, you made some connections, things went really well, but one person said something that irritated you, that rubbed you the wrong way. What happens? You go home and you're thinking about that one situation that bothered you rather than all the positive ones. And who wants to live like that? I sure don't, and I don't think anybody else out there wants to. So what do we do since this is a scientific medical fact? How can we change it? Are we just stuck living this way? No, I don't believe we are. Now, if you remember back to one of the earlier episodes of Toy Talk when we went to the movies with Shane Sanford, who I'd love to have on the show again, by the way. Shane, we need you back in here. But I mentioned in the intro of that show, I compared life to a garden. And I talked about when you're growing a garden of flowers, you can't just focus on the flowers. You do need to give them attention. You have to, take care of the soil. You have to till it and water it and get it the right amount of sun and all these things. But no matter how well you've done taking care of the flowers, they are never going to be the dominant part of your garden if you don't take care of the weeds. Now, of course, the flowers are the positive things when we're comparing it to life, and the weeds are the negative things. And what I said, and what I'm saying again, is you need to focus on the weeds as well. You have to take care of them. You have to pull them out. If you don't take care of the weeds, what ends up happening is they overpower the flowers. In other words, the negative will overpower the positive unless you take care of the negative. So accept it. It does exist. There are negative things, but as you're focusing on the positive, as in focusing on the flowers, as you're taking care of the positive things, giving attention to the positive things, in time, the positive will overcome the negative. I mean, a great way to do this in life would be sit down at the end of the day, take a journal, write on your computer nowadays, maybe on a notebook, whatever it is. Think about all the positive things that have happened, and you can think of the negative if you want to, but focus on the positive. What is a list of positive things that have happened today? Now, if you were to write both, you're going to see most days that more positive things happened than negative things. If you just list the positive, hey, even more focus on the positive. It's up to you how you want to do that, but I encourage you, take time to focus on the positive. Now, You may be saying, not a lot of positive things do happen every day, or even that not a lot of negative things do. The bottom line is both do happen. It's just all in a matter of how we think about things. Now, think of it this way. Every time you cross a street and make it successfully across, that's a positive thing. Now, you don't stop and think about that. It's just something you do several times a week, maybe several times a day, and crossing the street is just something you do. It's just an everyday, natural thing. But why is that positive? You know what? If you did not make it across that street, it'd be incredibly negative. If you got hit by a car, you might end up paralyzed, you could be killed. And if something negative happened, you would definitely focus on that. So why not focus on it in the positive? Now, you might be saying it's a much more of an impact if the negative happened, and that might be true, but you also have to realize that every single time you make it across the street in that one simple act, everything else in your life came about indirectly as a result of that. If you hadn't made it across that street, you may not have met the person you fell in love with and married. You may not have ended up having your family. You may not have gotten that job you wanted or accomplished whatever it is you wanted to accomplish. So every time even something little positive happens in life, that can be a big deal if you start to focus on it. And as you focus on the positive over the negative, you'll start to notice that your mind will change and you will start to notice the positive things more so than the negative. So I encourage you to do that. So let's get to commercial and we'll be back in just a few minutes with our Toy of the Week.
Max Steel's Robo Force!
Hunter the Conqueror is about to attack Max Steel the Leader! Wrecker the Demolisher to the rescue!
Ideal's new Robo-Force. Warrior robots with gripper bases and crusher arms, each sold separately.
Hundred's escaping!
Okay in there?
Okay, Dad! But we won't be safe till we're rid of Hundred.
Hundred the Conqueror, Max Steel the Leader, Wrecker the Demolisher, each sold separately. New from Ideal's Robo-Force.
It's time once again for another Toy of the Week. Now, later in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about wind-up toys. And for me, wind-up toys and pull strings, I always have a tendency to link these two together because they kind of went non-existent or stopped being made around the same time of each other. Now, I personally have a real weakness for pull string toys. I've probably got about, I'm guessing a couple dozen in my collection, but today I brought in a couple of my favorites and want to share the stories behind them. Now, the first is the J.J. Evans toy string from Good Times, not one you see very often, nice ragdoll. Now, the reason this one is significant to me is I've shared the story before on Toy Talk about how I was going through a rough time. I wandered into the Salem Toy Museum, and that's where I met Frank Sarcha, who was on our Halloween episode. Well, as I was going through the toy museum, and there's just literally thousands, if not tens of thousands of toys, for some reason my attention just kept continually going back to this J.J. Evans ragdoll. I don't even know why, but it just had my attention. As a matter of fact, when the toy museum went out of business, I actually had contacted Frank and tried to buy his, which he was not willing to part with. But in time, I did get JJ, and he's become one of my favorites. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull a string a little bit, get a little reading on JJ.
It's always right with Kid Dynamite!
And of course, Kid Dynamite. Good Times was such a great show. And the other one has a little bit more significant meaning. This is obviously the Mork from Ork doll with Robin Williams. Now, this is a toy that I wanted to add into my collection for quite a long time, for probably over 2 years. And I have a tendency, I want to find toys. For me, is as much about the hunt as it is about getting the toys. I like going out to flea markets and thrift stores, and I enjoy looking around for these things and finding deals, honestly. Well, again, I'd been looking for this for about 2 years when I finally broke down and decided I was going to buy it on eBay because I just wasn't finding it. And something just told me, I need to have this. I want this in my collection. So I went on eBay. Now, normally I do find deals and stuff, but there are toys that I end up shelling out a little more for, and I did that with the Mork from Ork doll. And what became significant about this is I went on, made an offer, got a deal with the guy, paid for this toy, and the day after I bought it, it came across the news that Robin Williams had died. And we all know the tragic circumstances of how his life ended. This was literally bought the day before, and it arrived it took 2 days to ship, so this arrived the day after he had died. So it's always been a It's a toy I always wanted, and it became even more significant because of the circumstances surrounding that. So we'll give him a pull as well. And of course we got the Nanu Nanu. They both have several phrases, both Mork and JJ, and they are two of my favorite toys in my entire collection, and they are definitely, for me, the crown jewels of my pull strings. Now we're going to cut to commercial one more time, and we'll be right back with our guest for this month, Kevin Mann.
Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs are on a rampage, and only the JP team is tough enough to stop them. Grant fires his net launcher. Ellie launches her grappling hook. Muldoon fires a tranquilizer, each sold separately. It's happening, but only at Jurassic Park.
It's a stampede. They're in trouble. Will they escape? It's up to you with The Best of the West by Martz. Rush Captain Maddox to the rescue, along with General Custer. Who started it? Ferocious Chief Geronimo on his horse Comanche. And there's Johnny West with his horse Thunderbolt. Jay West drives the buckboard with his sister Janice, while his twin brother, riding Honcho, fires to turn the herd. There's Jane West. Can she control the covered wagon? The stampede is getting closer. Will Jane and Janice escape? It's up to you. You're the boss of the Wild West with your Best of the West collection. Each figure complete with up to 31 pieces of authentic gear. And look how you can pose Comanche. Get The Best of the West by Martz.
And welcome back. And this month we are joined by a new guest, and he is the owner of Manly Toys as well as Caveman Studios. Let's all welcome Kevin Mann.
Thank
Kevin,
you.
Great to have you here on Toy Talk.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And you know, we were talking, you were born in the same year as me, 1971.
Yes.
And one of the big things we were talking about is how our lives were, with toys, were very much kind of like the story in Toy Story movies.
Yeah.
You know, everything kind of was like, went straight from cowboy toys up to, you know, space toys. It was just this big change all of a sudden.
Yeah. My childhood, growing up in the early 70s, is kind of like Andy in Toy Story. So
Exactly.
he had Woody, and then he traded off Woody for Buzz Lightyear.
Traded off Woody, the Buzz.
There's a little bit of a balance
Yeah.
there. But, you know, and for my childhood, it was like I grew up with kind of the sunsetting of Westerns,
Yeah.
and they're still around. Bonanza was on
Yeah,
TV.
exactly.
And I watched other shows. Big Valley, I think.
A good way to put it. Like when I was a kid, like, you know, when I was probably about 8 or 9, like
Yeah.
after school, you were watching, like, you know, stuff like Gilligan's Island, and you were always watching The Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly,
but then
yeah.
by the time we were getting closer to 10, everything became like Star Wars.
Right. So
You know?
so that little film in 1977, I think I was about 6. That
Yeah.
changed the world essentially.
We got some of the droids right up here.
Right,
R2
so
and
those
R5.
guys, yeah, so R2-D2
And R5-D4,
and a
yep.
knockoff of R2-D2. I mean, yeah, they just spawned so much and changed so much of that.
And it did. And I mean, all of a sudden there was shows like that all over the place. We had Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
I mean, Star Trek had been around before,
Yeah.
but, you know, it started to get a resurgence. You know, they made the Star Trek movie basically because Star Wars had done so well. You know, they went out and said, "Oh, we have something kind of like this," and so they made that awful Star Trek the motion picture. But you know, but, you know, it did bring Star Trek back. Yeah.
It wasn't quite like Star Wars. It didn't have like the element of adventure, but
Exactly. But getting into the toys, you did bring something from Battlestar Galactica.
I did. So this is, of course, the Cylon Raider, which is the evil guy. But I just wanted to contrast
It's
Johnny.
a cool figure, though.
It is. So I just wanted to contrast Johnny West. I had this guy when I was I think I was like 3 years old. My mom used to drop me off at a babysitter's, and she had a shoebox full of similar guys, and so she bought me a Johnny West.
Yeah.
And he was made by Mark's Toys.
Exactly. Johnny West was the big cowboy toy of the time.
He was a pretty big deal,
Yeah.
and so I had the cowboy and I had the horse, and later on I started getting things like
didn't straight out.
I didn't
you
exactly.
added.
I always have love for the cowboy.
Yeah, you kept the cowboys, but yeah.
But yeah, then things changed a little bit, and so my fascination has drifted and fondness for robots, so for the droids and another toy line that I have on my left here.
Exactly. And you had the Cylon, and then, you know, they had these little guys. I loved these, the Tommy Rascals.
Tommy Rascals, yeah.
And, you know, they were little wind-up toys.
Yeah.
These were awesome. You know, there was just such a huge, you know, the wind-up toys kind of, were becoming obsolete in a way. You know, they were
like the tin ones.
switching over to electronic toys in the late 70s and early 80s. But then Toby just kept releasing these little twist toys. You know, they had Bumble and Bolin, I'm sorry, Strollin' Bolin and Bumble and Boxin'.
Yep, I think I have one of those, and they jump along when you twist them. Yeah.
Exactly, and they would just go down and try to knock over the pins.
It's a little bowling ball that walks right down the lane. It's funny.
And I've always got a big weakness for pull string toys, and around this, that was the same time that the pull strings and the wind-up toys, they were just kind of hanging on by a thread, but this line was just so cool.
Yeah. Oh, I love these. So they came out in so many different variations.
Yes.
And I had to hunt for some of these guys because the little guy with the gold and red, super hard to find.
The different colors are harder to find.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm always on the hunt for some of these guys.
Well, and you brought this one that was packaged, and actually this is the one I remember having as a kid. I remember the blue top with the orange.
What's the retail price on that?
And oh gosh, the retail price was 75 cents.
75 cents. That's a bargain.
And it's really cool too because this one says, I don't even know, Coquins or Coquins. It was the French Canadian version.
French, exactly.
Came over from Canada.
Has the bilingual on it. So.
But these are so cool, and a lot of people say they were supposed to be like a version of Robbie the Robot, a smaller version.
Because the arms are going straight up.
They reminded me. You said they reminded you more of R2-D2, and that's what it did for me as well.
Yeah.
You know? And just at that time, just so much was coming on in regard to robots, and there was another line that you started bringing some stuff in for.
Yeah, so this is a fun, real obscure line when it comes to toy collecting and the popularity of toys. So this came out, RoboForce came out in 1984. It was made by Ideal Corporation, which their biggest hit was the Rubik's Cube prior to that. So they wanted to get into the action figure game. Star Wars was big prior to that, and then you had G.I. Joe, the little G.I. Joe, and Transformers, and He-Man, Masters of the Universe. So they tried to get into the game because these companies were making millions of dollars. So they made this line. They had big plans for it. So they made a telephone. I mean, I don't know how many other toy lines had telephones. They made.
It was little Garfield and Snoopy and stuff.
Yeah. So they had. They made books. They made and they made the actual toys. So there were about 10 of these guys. This is Max Steel.
He was the main character.
He's the main character. And then they had villains and they had good guys. And then Max has this little feature where when you push this, there's like a valve, a little plunger thing in the back. You push it and his arms come together. And then he has a suction cup on the back that you can stick them to the ceiling. I think the ad shows that.
Those for the ceiling. That makes sense.
Or whatever, the window, wherever you wanted to stick them. But he actually came in a perfect size. So like a Star Wars figure would be smaller than him. He-Man would be bigger than him. Didn't matter. You can kind of use your imagination.
Cool. And I like, I never really thought about it on the suction thing, but that was right about the time when all those suction things for cars were the big deal. The whole baby on board and the Garfield sticking his hand up and everything. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of kids were driving around with their Max Steel stuck on the side of the car window.
Suction technology.
Going down the road,
So, exactly.
And there's just so many lines we could talk about. Space 1999.
One of my favorites.
Everything shifted. Cowboys, like I said, it was like, one day you were watching Cowboys, and the next day everything went from the old west to the past to the future, to the sci-fi everything.
So for me, it's people say, well, what's your favorite toy line? Well, I don't have one. I love them all.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the 2001: A Space Odyssey, the beginning of the dawn of man to the end of time. So I marry the two with dinosaurs and robots. So those tend to be the core of the things that I collect.
Exactly.
So robots, obviously, but then I collect like Dino Riders.
And we're going to get into some dinosaur toys you have in a few minutes. But first, I also wanted to mention, we said you were from Manly Toys, and that's first of all, you have a Facebook group that I know.
I do. Following. Vintage Toys New England is the name of the group. Yeah. And then we actually do a show a couple times a year. Actually, we've done 3. We're going to do a 4th next month. If this airs in March.
And where exactly are the shows?
So we actually do the Toy Fest. Toy Fest 4 will be the next one. We do them at the Main Mall in South Portland, Maine.
South Portland.
Yep. Okay. So the best part about the show.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just got to say, I saw your post about Toy Fest, but I didn't realize you were hosting it. I thought it was something you were going to.
I'm one of the vendors, and I actually sell toys there. But I like to say that I deal in memory. So I cannot tell you how many people will come up. Number one, they don't buy anything. That's okay. They come up and they love the display of toys.
Yeah, they just want to see all the stuff that's there.
Joy, like your show.
Yep.
And then the people who do buy, a lot of times they see see an item they weren't really planning on seeing, and so they they're ecstatic.
I
usually.
know for me, and I think it's for a lot of people that go to these different conventions and different stuff, the things that really catch your eye is either toys you had, toys you wanted, or something that was related to a movie or a TV show that you loved. You know, it's just,
I totally agree.
Now, we're going to go into the dinosaurs in a few minutes. Like we said, you go from the dinosaurs to the robots.
Yep.
But in addition to the toys, you also do a lot of artwork.
I do.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I have an art background. I studied art. I got a Master of Fine Arts in printmaking in the late 90s, and then taught for a little while. Moved into sales, and so, but I've kept a kind of a thread of creativity throughout everything I've done. I continue to work out of sketchbooks. This is one of my sketchbooks. It happens to say toys on the front. I did that a number of years ago. But I do robots. I like to leave drawings when I travel for housekeeping.
Different place. Oh, housekeeping.
Yeah,
okay.
so that somebody might get a surprise with an
What
original
it is.
piece of art.
And now for that, you go by under the title of Caveman Studios.
Yeah, Caveman with 2 N's. It's in a K, so it's
K-A-V-E-M-A-N-N.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. So.
It's the Kevin Mann, the M-A-N-N.
Yep, it's kind of a euphemism for my name. Yeah.
But let's take a look at a little bit of your artwork.
Okay, sure. So just a few sketches here. I'll maybe make a comment on them. This is actually a robot that I designed in memory of my father. He passed away from Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
There's some elements of it that have to do with him. The robot's standing on a stack of newspapers. He delivered newspapers as a kid. It's holding a crate of peaches. He came from Georgia, which we all know. A lot of peaches. And he loved cars. He owned a Corvette, 61 Corvette. So a lot of the parts of the top of it and there's even a part in the middle are related to cars.
It's a great tribute. It's a great memory for your father.
Yeah, a lot of meaning in my drawings. So another drawing here I have is from I took a trip out to Texas, business trip, and so I did this dilapidated robot. It's rusting in the middle of the desert, paint peeling from it.
This isn't space age meets Western. I don't know what is. You know.
Right, and in fact, it has a cowboy boot on and a vest and a sheriff's star on its chest.
Cool.
So enough said about that. And then this is actually, so there's a lot of people on Instagram. This is the shark. Yeah, so the shark robot was a contest. A lot of people on Instagram will do these, draw in your own style. So they'll create the design. You do your own version of it. So I did, I did the shark kind of with barnacles on it, sitting on legs. So it's like, kind of like Sharknado or something like that.
And you brought another big one that we got kind of just
this is so I do scale up. I do larger pieces. I've got some mural size stuff I've done in the past, but this is like a colored pencil watercolor piece of a robot. Actually, it was another one of those Instagram inspirations.
Oh, okay.
Done in my own style, so with kind of optic light tentacles and some liquid coming out of a glass dome head with an iron collar. So yeah, I put a lot of work into my drawings and a lot of hidden stuff often in the background.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. But that lead us into, we said we were going to be getting into dinosaurs, but there's a reason we wanted to go into the artwork first well, let's pull it up first. You brought in some Jurassic Park toys. So let's take a look at those first. And then
so back
here, explain the tie to the artwork.
If she stands up and cooperates, this was Kenner Toys made the Thrasher T-Rex after the first movie of Jurassic Park. And then they, as companies do, they kind of try to keep that line going and have it survive.
And remember, they always had to have the JP mark, because the commercials would always declare.
So this one right here is
and this was the Thrasher
T-Rex, same as this.
Yep.
They repainted it. It's called a repaint, and it's the same mold.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then they redesigned the box for a new toy line. So this is called Chaos Effects. So the idea was
Chaos Effects. That's what I was trying to think of when I said
exactly. Yeah. So it combines DNA from the T-Rex to make more of a hybrid dinosaur with it, which is actually the theme of the Jurassic World movie.
Well, in the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World movies, we could just set it down.
Yeah.
But they've been so popular. But there's other aspects of it that we don't all know about that aren't quite as public, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that.
So so the reason this line exists was because there was a planned cartoon. They were supposed to air a cartoon. A lot of toys in the 80s that had cartoons to go with them. This was there was an artist by the name of William Stout. He did some of the work on Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yes.
He was involved with Indiana Jones.
All kinds of
yeah,
stuff.
a lot. There's an old cartoon from the 70s called Wizards. So he was a guy who did a lot of stage design, set
Yeah,
design.
he did a lot of the artwork, and
Yep.
this was supposed to be. It wasn't going to be for kids. This was it was going to be more of an adult cartoon. They said it was going to be pretty gory. You know, it wasn't going to tone down on the people getting chewed up and things. There would have been blood and guts.
Which
but
could be the reason why Steven Spielberg said, no way, we're not doing this.
it might have been, and that's exactly what happened. This was a big plan. I mean, the artwork came out recently,
Yeah.
and I'm going to see if we can pull up some pictures to show of like the artwork. It was mostly the characters from the movies,
Yeah.
but they had this ready and good to go, and Spielberg basically stepped up and said, no, it's not happening.
Yeah, and I think another part of it too was too much marketing. There was just
Well,
too
that's
much
the
going
reason
on.
I've
Yep.
always heard is he
Yep.
just felt the movie was so over marketed, over publicized. There was, you know, toy lines and posters and everything
Yep.
was just that he just didn't want anything else. He didn't want more focus off of the movies themselves.
Right, but when it comes to collectors, we love that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
We fill
Well, that's the
our
thing. I mean, you
studios
look at
with-
Star Wars; they try to put out as many toys as possible, and even, I mean, when you get into certain bands like Kiss or certain like they want all
Yep.
the merchandising. But if you think about it over the years, Spielberg's films have not had a lot of merchandising behind them. Even like big hits like E.T. that were geared to kids,
Yeah.
they didn't have a lot of merchandise that went with
true.
E.T.
Yeah, yeah. That is,
You know,
yeah,
I think
good
when he
point.
saw this oversaturation for Jurassic Park, he just said, you know, that's it. I've had enough. No more.
Yeah, why aren't there any action figures of Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Nothing at all.
It was right around the time of Star Wars.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about
yeah.
that. It's great to just take a look at the different times from all the way from back to the Stone Age, to the Westerns, to the future. It just covers kind of not only all of known history, but going into the future a
Exactly.
bit. You know, and just it's great to just talk about these. It's such incredible toy lines.
Oh, I
Just
love
lots
it.
of fun.
Yeah, I love it.
Kevin,
Can't
it's
get
been
enough.
great having you on the show, man.
Well, thanks for having me.
We'll have to talk again sometime. And yeah, thanks for being here, bro.
You're welcome.
All right.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you all again next time here on Toy Talk.